She mistook a millionaire heir for the waiter serving drinks. But that mistake changed everything. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The overhead lights in the Mercer Memorial Hospital intensive care unit buzzed softly, casting a pale glow across the polished floor. It was close to midnight when Olivia Reed arrived for her shift, her badge still clipped to the collar of her navy scrubs. She had worked in many wings of the hospital, but tonight was different. Tonight, she had been assigned to the highest priority case on the floor, a case whispered about by doctors and administrators for the last 48 hours. Behind the frosted glass of room 5C lay a man who had nearly become a headline instead of a patient. His name was Logan Mercer, heir to the Mercer Holdings empire, a name that filled newspapers, donation galas, and corporate boards across the country. The official report said he had lost control of his car in the rain and crashed along a winding exit ramp. But the tone in the hospital halls suggested something deeper, something buried beneath legal statements and guarded interviews. Whatever the truth was, Logan Mercer was now in a coma, suspended between life and death, guarded by machines and the steady beeping that echoed through the unit. Olivia clutched the clipboard pressed to her chest as she walked toward his door. She took a deep breath, steadying herself the way she always did before a difficult case. But when she pulled the curtain aside and stepped closer to the bed, her breath caught in her throat. She knew that face. Even without the crisp suit, the warm lighting of a ballroom, or the elegant clink of champagne flutes, she recognized him instantly. The strong jawline, the dark hair swept back with effortless confidence, the faint smile that had tugged at the corner of his mouth when he teased her. There was no mistaking it. 2 nights ago at the annual Mercer Foundation Charity Gala, Olivia had covered a side job with a catering company to help pay off student loans. She had spent the entire evening carrying trays of champagne, weaving through crowded halls filled with donors in glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. And that was where she had met him. She had seen him standing near a marble column, bottle of champagne in hand, pouring a drink with charming incompetence. To her, he looked like a new hire who had missed the orientation meeting. So she marched right up, snatched the bottle from his hand, and said, "You cannot serve sparkling wine like that. Let me show you before you embarrass the entire team." He had held up his hands in surrender, laughing softly. "Then please, teach me. I seem to be under very strict supervision tonight." She thought he was flirting. She thought he was a waiter. She thought he was just another staff member earning an hourly wage like her. She had no idea he was the host of the gala. She had no idea he was the man behind the Mercer Foundation banners glittering above the ballroom doors. She had no idea that a few hours later, he would be pulled from a mangled car in the pouring rain. And now he lay in front of her, pale, motionless, connected to a ventilator and a dozen monitors. Olivia's fingers trembled as she set her clipboard down. She stepped closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "It is you," she murmured. "The man who could not pour champagne to save his life." Her mind spun with disbelief, guilt, and something she could not yet name. She reached out and gently adjusted the blanket at his side, fighting the sting rising behind her eyes. She had lectured him like he was a trainee. She had scolded him for being careless. She had walked away that night without ever learning his real name. Now she wondered if he had heard her last words at the gala. Now she wondered if he had been leaving that very moment when the accident happened. Now she wondered what fate was trying to tell her by placing him in her care. The monitor beside him beeped steadily, each sound a reminder that he was still here, still holding on. Olivia straightened her shoulders, took one long breath, and whispered to him, as if he could hear, "Do not worry. I am here now, and I will not let you face this alone." The morning after her first encounter with Logan Mercer in the intensive care unit, Olivia Reed sat alone in the small staff lounge, her scrubs still carrying the faint scent of disinfectant and cold air from the overnight shift. Sunlight pushed through the frosted window, bright enough to sting her tired eyes. She rubbed her hands together, trying to steady the tremor she always felt after long nights in the critical care wing. But today, the tremor came from something else. It came from the face she had seen in room 5C. The face she remembered from the ballroom. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone. On the lock screen was a picture of her mother, smiling at a picnic table in a local park, holding a paper cup of coffee and squinting in the sun. Olivia stared at the photo for a long moment, her jaw tightening as old memories rose like a wave she could not push back down. Her mother had spent the last weeks of her life in an overcrowded public hospital, where every hallway smelled like bleach and urgency, and every nurse was running between 3 alarms at once. Olivia had been a college student then, unable to help except by holding her mother's hand and hoping she would not have to wait another hour for pain medication. She remembered the night her mother whispered, "Promise me you will be the kind of nurse who does not let people feel alone." Olivia had whispered back, "I will." It was the last promise she ever made to her. That promise became her reason for choosing nursing. It became the reason she survived 12-hour shifts, sleepless rotations, and the pressure that pinned new nurses to the floor. It became the reason she accepted the difficult assignments without complaint. And it was why, when the hospital administration asked who would take the Mercer case, she stepped forward even though every nurse in the room had flinched at the name. Logan Mercer was not just another patient. He was a public figure, a wealthy heir, a high-profile case that could end a nurse's career with one mistake. Hospitals did not treat people like him the same way they treated ordinary patients. There were layers of privacy, legal restrictions, additional paperwork, and entire chains of command that protected the patient's image before his well-being. One wrong move meant reporters, lawsuits, and dismissal. But for Olivia, it was simple. He was a man in a bed, unconscious and alone. And no title, no inheritance, no foundation gala could change that. Her mind drifted again to the night of the gala, when the ballroom glittered with chandeliers and the catering staff hurried through the crowd. She had taken that job because her student loan statements had arrived the same week as her rent increase. She had planned to work, collect her paycheck, and leave quietly. She had not expected to meet a well-dressed man who laughed when she corrected his champagne-pouring technique. She had not expected her words to matter to him. She had not expected him to look at her as if she were not invisible. And she had definitely not expected to see him again like this. A soft knock came on the lounge door. Dr. Hale, the supervising physician, stepped inside with a stack of charts in his hand. He glanced at Olivia, then at his notes. "Reed," he said, "we have confirmed the team for the Mercer case. You are primary overnight nurse. That means documenting every change, reporting directly to the attending physician, and following confidentiality to the letter." "I understand," Olivia said. "It will be intense," he added. "A case like this comes with pressure. Family members will visit. Security will monitor the floor. Reporters are already outside. If you feel uncomfortable, I can assign someone else." Olivia shook her head. "I want the case." Dr. Hale studied her for a long moment, as if trying to understand why she would volunteer for something others avoided. Then he nodded. "Very well. Mercer is stable, but we are watching for neurological responses. If anything changes, even something small, call me immediately." When he left, Olivia gathered her things and stood slowly, steadying her breath. The hallway outside hummed with the familiar sounds of carts rolling, gloves snapping, and monitors chiming. She walked toward room 5C with determined steps. Every nurse had cases that stayed with them for life. She already knew that this would be one of hers. As she approached the room, she placed a gentle hand on the doorframe before entering, grounding herself the way she always did before seeing a patient who needed more than routine care. The air inside was cool, touched with the faint rhythm of the ventilator. Logan lay where she had left him, still motionless, still pale, still fighting. Olivia moved closer and checked his chart, her voice soft but steady. "Good morning, Logan," she said. "It is a new day, and I am here again." For a moment, she imagined her mother standing behind her, whispering the promise she had made long ago. She straightened her shoulders and began her work, not as someone intimidated by the Mercer name, but as someone who believed no human life was worth less than another. She reached for a warm towel, beginning his morning care with the same gentle routine she would use for anyone. But her hands paused for just a second as she looked at him. "You were the last person I expected to see here," she murmured. "But maybe there is a reason for everything." The monitor continued its steady beeping, filling the room with a quiet, fragile heartbeat of hope. By the third day of caring for Logan Mercer, Olivia Reed had already settled into a rhythm. It was the kind of rhythm every critical care nurse learned to build, a steady sequence of tasks that blended medical precision with quiet human presence. In the Mercer case, that presence mattered more than anyone wanted to admit. The early morning sunlight filtered through the blinds of room 5C, falling across the pale sheets and the machines humming beside the bed. Olivia entered with her usual calm, rolling her cart of supplies to the corner and taking a moment to observe his vitals. Heart rate steady, oxygen level consistent, neurological markers unchanged. It was the same pattern every morning, but she checked as if it were the first time, her eyes tracing every number with unbroken focus. "Good morning, Logan," she said softly as she adjusted the monitor wires. "I am starting your routine. Let us make today a little better than yesterday." She spoke to him even though he lay perfectly still, because she believed it mattered. In her training, some said that unconscious patients could hear more than people realized. Others dismissed it as wishful thinking. But Olivia had been there when her mother had slipped in and out of consciousness, and she remembered how her mother's fingers tightened whenever she spoke. So she believed, and that belief guided every word. She began with a warm towel, wiping his hands and arms gently. It was a simple gesture, but one she considered sacred. The towel released steam into the cool air, softening the stiffness in his fingers. She massaged each knuckle with practiced care. "You would not believe how cold your hands always are," she murmured. "Maybe you would warm up faster if you were not so stubborn." She reached for a small bottle of moisturizer from her cart. The nurses on this wing often used it only when families requested extra comfort care, but Olivia used it because it made patients feel human even when they could not respond. Next, she smoothed the sheets and adjusted the pillow under his head. The slightest wrinkle could cause skin irritation for a patient who could not move. She checked the feeding line, the flow, and the ventilator settings. Everything was in perfect working order. Then came her favorite part of the routine. She set her phone on the bedside table and played the soft jazz music she had downloaded after the gala. She did not know why she chose jazz, except that it reminded her of the way Logan had laughed that night when she corrected his pouring technique. It was a memory she tried not to dwell on, but the melody helped her feel like she was giving him something familiar. "There," she said as a gentle saxophone filled the room. "You like this, did you not? Well, you will hear it every morning until you wake up." She sat beside the bed and opened her small notebook, the one she kept tucked in her pocket. Inside were small sketches she drew between tasks. Some were rough outlines of machines or room layouts, but others were of Logan from the gala. His hand tipping the champagne bottle at the wrong angle, his amused expression when she grabbed it from him. She had not meant to sketch him. Her pencil had simply moved. After a minute, she closed the notebook and stood again. She reached for a swab to moisten his lips, moving with instinctive gentleness. Every action was slow and deliberate, not because he required it, but because she refused to treat him like another anonymous patient wired to a machine. Olivia spoke again, keeping her tone light as she worked. "You know, Logan, caring for someone who does not talk back is actually easier than I expected. But I promise I will be the first to complain when you finally open your eyes and start arguing with me." As if answering her, the heart monitor gave a small skip. Just one beat, slightly out of rhythm, barely noticeable. Olivia froze. She watched the screen until the line returned to normal. It could have been nothing. It could have been everything. She leaned closer to him. "Logan, if you can hear me, blink or twitch or do something. I am right here." Nothing happened. The room stayed quiet, with only the jazz melody drifting through the air. She exhaled slowly, forcing herself not to imagine signs that were not there. She had seen nurses burn out hoping for moments that never came. She had vowed not to fall into that same trap. But she could not shake the feeling that something had shifted. Something small. Something fragile. When her shift neared its end, she finished by brushing his hair gently back from his forehead. It was not part of the official care routine, but it was part of hers. She placed a new warm towel across his arm, checked the monitors one last time, and whispered, "I will be back tonight. Keep fighting, Logan. Do not make me give up on you." She stepped out into the hallway and pulled the door closed behind her. What she did not see was the faintest flutter beneath his eyelids, so slight that the machines did not detect it, but real enough to suggest that her words were not lost in the silence. Something inside him had heard her. The evening shift in the intensive care unit always carried a different weight. The halls grew quieter, the lights dimmed slightly, and the thin hum of machines became the dominant soundtrack of the wing. For Olivia Reed, it was the time of day when hope felt strangely louder, as if the silence made every small change more noticeable. She pushed her cart back into room 5C just after 7 p.m., her badge tapping softly against her chest. Logan Mercer lay exactly where she had left him that morning, but something in the air felt different. It was the same room, the same patient, the same steady rhythm of the ventilator, yet the atmosphere had shifted in a way she could not name. "Good evening, Logan," she said gently as she turned on the bedside lamp. "I told you I would be back." She checked his vitals first, reading each number twice. Everything remained stable. The neurologic readings were unchanged. She noted it all on her chart, the pen moving in careful strokes. After documenting, she reached for a warm towel and started his nightly care with the same methodical patience she used every day. But as she cleaned his left arm, she felt a faint tremor beneath her fingertips. She paused, her heart thudding once, sharply, before she leaned in closer. "Logan," she whispered. "Was that you?" The monitor showed a brief spike. Just a small pulse of activity. Barely more than a blip. But it was there. She watched his hand carefully. At first, nothing happened. Then, as she brushed the towel across the back of his knuckles again, one finger twitched, a subtle movement like a reflex waking up from deep sleep. Olivia's breath caught in her chest. She knew she needed to be cautious. She knew the mind could play tricks on a tired nurse desperate for progress. But the movement had been real. She pressed the call button for the attending physician, keeping her eyes on his hand. "Logan, if you can't hear me, try again," she said softly. "You did it once. You can do it again." The door opened, and Dr. Hale stepped inside, followed by a resident. Olivia pointed to the monitor and explained what she had seen. Dr. Hale approached the bed, adjusting Logan's wrist and tapping lightly along the forearm. "Reflex arc," the resident said after a moment. "It happens. Not a purposeful movement." Olivia kept her voice steady, though she felt heat rising beneath her skin. "It was not a random contraction. It responded to my voice." Dr. Hale checked the readings again. "The numbers look unchanged. There is no neurological shift. Reflexes are common in patients at this stage, Reed." The resident folded her arms. "I know you want him to wake up, but sometimes we see what we want to see." Those words stung, but Olivia did not let it show. Instead, she asked calmly, "Could we schedule another neurological assessment? Just to be sure." Dr. Hale hesitated, then nodded. "We will run one in the morning. But for tonight, keep monitoring. If anything changes, call immediately." They left the room, and the door clicked shut behind them. Olivia exhaled slowly, returning her attention to Logan. The jazz playlist began again from her phone, soft piano drifting through the quiet room. She placed the warm towel over his arm and continued her routine, but her hands moved with new purpose. She leaned close to his ear. "I know it was real," she whispered. "I felt you try? Even if they do not believe it yet, I do." The rest of her shift passed quietly, but the earlier moments stayed vivid in her mind. Every time she checked his vitals, she replayed the tiny movement, convincing herself she had not imagined it. It was too coordinated, too responsive, to be an accident. When her break finally came, she stepped into the hallway, where two nurses were filling water pitchers. They glanced at her. "You were assigned to the Mercer case, right?" one asked. "I heard you thought he moved." Olivia kept her tone neutral. "I saw a response. I reported it." The other nurse exchanged a knowing look with her coworker. "Do not get too attached, Olivia. Patients like him do not wake up because someone plays soft music for them." Olivia's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. There was no point in arguing with people who had already made up their minds. She had learned long ago that some medical professionals treated hope like an inconvenience instead of something sacred. When she returned to room 5C, she noticed something she had missed before. Logan's eyelids had fluttered. Only once. Only for a second. But she saw it. Her pulse quickened. She leaned close again. "Logan, if that was you, I need you to do it again. I am right here. Take your time." The room stayed still. Then, ever so slightly, his eyelid twitched again. The movement was tiny, almost indistinguishable unless someone was watching closely. She pressed her lips together, holding back the swell of emotion rising inside her. She wanted to call Dr. Hale, but she also knew 2 slight twitches might still be dismissed as reflexes. Instead, she documented everything in her chart. The time, the movement, the pattern, the second response. She placed a fresh pillow under his shoulder, then took a moment to brush his hair from his forehead again, letting her hand linger just a second longer. You are fighting, she whispered. I can feel it. Keep going, Logan. I will not stop believing in you. Outside his room, the hospital quieted into the low hum of a late evening shift. Nurses moved like shadows across the hall. Machines pulsed steadily. The world continued its measured routine. But inside room 5C, something had changed. Something small. Something fragile. Something real. And although no one else believed it yet, Olivia knew the truth. Logan Mercer was trying to come back. The storm outside the Mercer Memorial Hospital began just after midnight, rolling in with sheets of rain that struck the windows like handfuls of gravel. Thunder echoed over the city, low and distant, the kind that vibrated through the walls of the intensive care unit. To most of the staff, it was just another night. To Olivia Reed, it felt like pressure building in the air, a strange tension that wrapped around her chest as she walked down the dim hallway toward room 5C. Her shoes clicked softly on the polished floor. The unit had grown quieter than usual, as if the storm outside had pulled sound away from the corridors. She entered Logan Mercer's room and closed the door behind her, shutting out the faint chatter from the nurse's station. The bedside lamp cast a warm circle of light over Logan's motionless figure. His skin looked slightly more flushed than the night before, but his expression remained peaceful, suspended somewhere between consciousness and the deep silence that had held him for days. Logan, she said gently as she stepped to his side. It is me. I am starting your overnight care. She set down her chart and began her routine. Warm towel. Moisturizer. Repositioning his arm to prevent stiffness. Checking the ventilator's readings. Everything moved in the same sequence as the night before, but her heart beat faster with each step. She could not stop thinking about the movements she had seen earlier. The twitch of his fingers. The flutter of his eyelids. She had documented them carefully, but it did not matter. Until today's neurological assessment revealed something significant. The medical team would treat it like coincidence. Olivia pressed her hand lightly against his forearm, feeling the faint warmth beneath the skin. I know you are trying, she whispered. I know you hear me. You are not alone, Logan. Not tonight. As she turned to adjust the four-line, thunder cracked overhead, loud enough to make her jump. The lights flickered once, then steadied. The sudden sound sent a quick spike through Logan's heart monitor, a sharp rise before settling again. Olivia leaned over him, her breath caught in her throat. It is all right, she said softly. It is only the storm. Then something happened. Logan's fingers curled. Not the tiny twitch from earlier. This was a slow, deliberate movement, like a person trying to grasp something in a dream. Olivia froze. Logan, she whispered. If you can't hear me, try again. I am right here. His fingers uncurled, then curled again, more purposeful this time. Her hands shook. She hit the call button, but did not take her eyes off him. Before anyone could respond, a soft sound broke the silence. A low, breathy sigh. A vocal sound. A sound he had not made since the crash. Olivia leaned over him, her heart pounding. Logan, can you speak? Can you hear me? His eyelids fluttered. Once. Twice. Then slowly, painfully, they lifted. His eyes were unfocused, dazed, as if the world was too bright. He blinked, breathing heavily through the oxygen line. Then his gaze shifted toward her. Not fully, not clearly, but enough that she knew he was no longer lost. Logan, she breathed, unable to steady her voice. You are awake. You came back. His lips parted. No sound came at first. He tried again, his brow furrowing as if it required enormous effort. Finally, in a hoarse whisper barely louder than the ventilator's hum, he managed one word. Boss. The word hit her like a shock. He remembered. Not his accident. Not the hospital. Not his title or his family or the chaos surrounding his life. He remembered her. He remembered the gala. He remembered the moment she scolded him for pouring champagne wrong. Olivia covered her mouth with her hand, a trembling laugh escaping as tears filled her eyes. You remembered that? She whispered. After everything, that is what you held on to? He blinked slowly, fighting to stay awake. His lips moved again, struggling to form a second thought. You came back. I did, she said, leaning closer. I told you I would. You are safe, Logan. You are safe. The door swung open and Dr. Hale rushed inside, followed by 2 nurses. Reed, you called. He stopped mid-sentence as he saw Logan's open eyes. My goodness. Logan? Logan, can you hear me? Logan attempted to turn his head toward the doctor, but failed. His eyes drifted back to Olivia instead, as if she were the only fixed point he recognized. Dr. Hale checked the monitors, disbelief spreading across his face. Pupillary reaction is active. Motor response present. This is real. The resident who had dismissed her earlier stood speechless, staring at the readings. I cannot believe it, she said quietly. Olivia did not respond to her. Her focus stayed on Logan, who continued to track her with tired, unsteady eyes. She took his hand gently. You did it, Logan, she whispered. You came back. I am so proud of you. His fingers tightened weakly around hers, a fragile but unmistakable gesture. The storm rumbled again outside, but the room felt brighter somehow. Warmer. Alive. As Logan struggled to hold his eyes open, Olivia leaned close and whispered in a steady, comforting voice, Rest now. I will not leave you. Not tonight. Not ever. The monitors continued their steady rhythm, and for the first time since the accident, the sound felt like hope instead of survival. Logan Mercer had awakened, and he had awakened to her. By the next morning, the entire atmosphere of the intensive care unit had changed. News traveled faster in a hospital than through any official briefing, and by sunrise every nurse, resident, and orderly knew that Logan Mercer, the man who had been silent and unresponsive for days, had opened his eyes. But for Olivia Reed, the shift change felt strangely intimate, as if she were returning to a room where something had happened that only the 2 of them truly understood. She stepped quietly into room 5C, holding a fresh chart and a cup of warm water for herself. Logan was no longer connected to the full ventilator. The respiratory team had replaced it with a smaller oxygen system that allowed him to breathe with assistance instead of total dependence. His color was better, though exhaustion clung to every inch of him. He turned his head slightly when she entered, a slow motion that must have taken a tremendous amount of effort. Good morning, Olivia said, her voice soft but steady. You had quite a night. His brow furrowed, as if the phrase sounded familiar and foreign at the same time. He parted his lips, struggling to speak. She leaned closer. Take your time, Logan. You do not need to rush anything. He swallowed, his throat working painfully. Finally, he managed a hoarse whisper. Water? Olivia nodded immediately. Of course. She retrieved a sponge swab dipped in ice water, pressing it gently against his lips. He closed his eyes as he absorbed the moisture, relief relaxing the tight lines in his face. When she finished, she said, Do you remember anything else? Anything besides what you said last night? His eyelids lifted slightly, confusion clouding his expression. Gala, he murmured. Music, you telling me. I poured wrong. A tiny laugh escaped her, warm and disbelieving. Yes, you absolutely did. You were holding the bottle like it was about to explode. He blinked again, and for a moment there was a spark in his eyes, something like amusement mixed with recognition. But it faded quickly, replaced by disorientation. He whispered, After that, nothing. Olivia nodded, her professionalism returning. That is normal. Memory loss around a traumatic event is extremely common. Do not force anything. Your mind will return piece by piece. She reached gently for his wrist to check his pulse. His fingers curled weakly around hers, not intentionally, just a reflex, but the warmth of it startled her. She steadied her breath and continued documenting the morning vitals. A faint knock sounded at the door, and Dr. Hale entered with the neurology team. A swirl of papers, clipboards, and tablets followed him like a miniature storm of authority. Well then, the doctor said as he approached the bed. Mr. Mercer, it is good to see you awake. Logan's eyes tracked him, but when he opened his mouth to speak, only a soft rasp emerged. Olivia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You do not have to talk much. Just answer what you can. The neurologist held up 2 fingers. Can you tell me how many fingers I am holding up? Logan blinked slowly. 2. They asked him a series of questions. His name, his age, whether he knew where he was. He answered some correctly, hesitated on others, and became visibly exhausted halfway through. His breathing grew shallow, and Olivia stepped forward. "He needs a break," she said firmly. "His oxygen saturation is dropping." The neurologist nodded. "We will continue later." Before leaving, Dr. Hale reviewed the chart and then looked at Olivia. "Your documentation from last night was thorough. You caught the signs exactly when they happened." There was no skepticism this time. No dismissive tone. Only respect. After the team left, Logan turned his head toward her again, his voice barely audible. "You stayed?" "I did," she said. "I stayed until the morning shift came. You were not alone." His eyes softened with something that looked like gratitude but felt heavier, deeper. A few minutes later, another knock sounded. This time it was sharper, more urgent. Two individuals stepped in wearing tailored clothing and strained expressions. Olivia recognized them immediately. Family. The woman, elegant, poised, and cold in the way that matched every rumor about the Mercer lineage, stepped forward. "Logan," she breathed, placing a manicured hand on his arm. "Thank goodness. You scared us all." The man beside her, younger but with the same sharp jawline, crossed his arms. His tone was less gentle. "Do you remember anything about the accident, cousin?" Olivia felt Logan stiffen under her hand. His gaze flickered with confusion and discomfort. "No, nothing." The woman exhaled dramatically. "Trauma-induced gaps. We anticipated this." The man studied Olivia with thin skepticism, as if she existed solely to inconvenience him. "And you are the overnight nurse?" "Reed, correct?" "Yes," Olivia replied calmly. "I trust you will be cautious with what you say. Media outlets are very interested in this case, and we expect discretion." Olivia kept her expression neutral. "Patient confidentiality is part of my job." He nodded, but there was no gratitude in his eyes. Only calculation. When they finally stepped outside to speak with Dr. Hale, Logan let out a shaky breath. "I know them, but they feel wrong." Olivia adjusted his pillow. "You do not need to figure anything out right now. Rest is your only task." He closed his eyes, and for several seconds he simply breathed. Then he whispered, "You feel familiar." Her heart tightened, but she answered in the steady voice of a compassionate professional. "That is because I have been here. Every hour. Every day. That is all." She dimmed the lamp slightly and sat beside him until his breathing steadied. Outside, murmurs from his relatives drifted faintly through the door, but inside the room, the world felt small and quiet. A place where healing happened slowly. A place where memories returned in fragments. A place where one person's presence had become his anchor. And for Logan Mercer, that anchor was Olivia. By the time the afternoon shift settled in, the atmosphere around room 5C had changed entirely. The moment word spread that Logan Mercer was awake, the hospital's executive floor seemed to migrate straight into the intensive care unit. Voices that did not belong in a medical hallway began to echo off the walls, firm, rehearsed, and layered with corporate caution. Olivia Reed felt that pressure long before she saw it. As she returned from her short lunch break, she spotted two security guards posted near Logan's door. The blinds had been partially drawn, and three unfamiliar individuals in tailored suits were speaking with Dr. Hale in hushed, urgent tones. The Mercer family had arrived in full force. Olivia stepped into the room quietly, wanting to avoid interrupting whatever negotiation was happening outside. Logan lay awake, propped slightly against the raised bed. His eyes flickered toward her when she entered, a sign of recognition that still startled her every time. "You are back," he murmured, the words faint but more coherent than earlier. "I told you I would be," Olivia replied. "How are you feeling?" "Like someone hit me with a truck," he said slowly. Then he paused. "Did someone?" Olivia smiled softly, relieved to hear humor in his voice even if the memory behind the question was missing. "Let us focus on small steps before we tackle big mysteries." He shifted slightly, trying to adjust his arm and wincing at the effort. Olivia immediately stepped in to help reposition him, her movements gentle and practiced. "Thank you," he whispered. Before she could answer, the door opened sharply. Logan's relatives stepped inside again, this time with an air of urgency that did not match the calm professionalism expected in a hospital. Victoria Mercer, his stepmother, placed a hand on her chest dramatically. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, leaning forward. "You look stronger already. We were so worried." Olivia felt Logan's frame tense under her hands. Behind her stood Brandon Mercer, arms crossed. watching everything with an intensity that felt accusatory. His eyes landed on Olivia. "Reed," he said, "a moment, please." Olivia glanced at Logan. He looked uneasy, so she answered calmly. "I need to monitor his vitals first." "This will take 10 seconds, Brandon insisted. Logan turned his head slightly and whispered, "Stay." The word was not loud. It was not forceful, but it was clear. Olivia remained where she was. Brandon's jaw tightened. "We would like to discuss matters concerning the family's privacy," he said, lowering his voice, but not enough to hide the edge beneath it. "This case is highly sensitive, and we expect all staff to limit conversation with the patient to strictly medical topics." Olivia met his stare evenly. "Everything I say is strictly connected to his care, Mr. Mercer. I understand hospital protocol." Victoria stepped forward, adding a layer of sugar-coated frostiness to the moment. "It is wonderful that you have been attentive, Nurse Reed, and we appreciate your effort. But as Logan becomes more aware, it is essential that he receives information that is accurate and beneficial." Something unspoken hung behind the statement. A warning. A boundary. Olivia nodded politely, but said nothing. They shifted their attention back to Logan, their smiles returning instantly. "Once you are stronger," Victoria began, "we will move you to a private facility upstate. Somewhere more comfortable. Somewhere where you will not deal with noise or confusion." Logan frowned. "I do not want to leave." Brandon stepped closer. "This hospital has done what it can. You need specialized rehab. And there are company matters waiting for your input. The board is concerned." Olivia noticed the way Logan's eyes darkened, not in understanding, but in quiet distress. He was not ready for this level of pressure. He had barely regained consciousness. "He needs rest," Olivia said firmly. "Not meetings." Brandon shot her a look of irritation. "Nurse Reed, please understand the difference between medical care and corporate responsibility." Olivia held her ground. "My responsibility is his health. And right now, this conversation is raising his stress level." Victoria softened her tone, but not her intent. "All we ask is that you remember your place here. Logan's recovery is a family matter." Olivia swallowed the frustration rising in her chest. "Everything that happens in this room is a medical matter first." The room fell silent for a moment. Logan shifted weakly, his voice strained. "Please, just let me breathe." Victoria immediately pressed a hand to his shoulder. "Of course, darling, of course. We will let you rest." She gestured to Brandon, and they stepped out with a flurry of tense whispers. As the door closed, the air finally loosened. Olivia moved closer to Logan's side, checking his breathing. His pulse had quickened. His forehead glistened, with a light sheen of stress. "I am sorry," he murmured. "They mean well, but everything feels loud. Like I woke up in the middle of a conversation I do not remember starting." Olivia nodded. "You do not owe anyone explanations right now. You are still healing." He looked at her with tired eyes. "You are the only one who talks to me like I am not a headline." She hesitated, then offered a small smile. "That is because you are not. You are my patient." He studied her for a moment, quietly absorbing her words. "You feel like the only steady thing in this room," he whispered. Olivia did not respond, but she stayed beside him until his breathing returned to a calm rhythm. Outside in the hallway, the shadows of the Mercer family passed back and forth beyond the glass window, murmuring about public statements, inheritance logistics, and the timeline for Logan's return to public life. Inside room 5C, Olivia saw something different. She saw a man trying to hold on to pieces of himself before everyone else decided who he needed to become. And she knew, with a certainty she could not explain, that her presence mattered more than anyone realized. 2 days after Logan Mercer first opened his eyes, the hospital returned to a tense routine. Reporters lingered outside. Security patrolled the hallways. Administrators whispered about liability and privacy. And inside room 5C, a man who should have remembered everything about his privileged life could only recall scattered fragments that made no sense when placed together. Olivia Reed entered the room just after dawn, the sky still gray from the previous night's rainfall. Logan was awake, resting against the raised incline of the bed, his gaze unfocused as though he were trying to chase a memory just out of reach. "Good morning," Olivia said as she checked his chart. "How did you sleep?" "Poorly," Logan answered, his voice stronger than before. "I keep hearing the same sound in my head. Screeching brakes. And rain." but nothing else. She paused her note-taking. That can happen. Trauma can isolate certain sensory memories. The brain protects itself. But protected from what? He asked quietly. Olivia had no answer she could safely give. She could only continue inspecting his foreline. Though her thoughts were already drifting back to the conversation she had overheard the previous night at the nurse's station about a technician who had been instructed to keep certain details out of the official accident report, details that had never been explained. She refocused and offered a gentle reassurance. Your memories will return in time. For now, let us make sure your body continues to heal. Logan nodded, but his expression remained troubled. When she finished his vitals, Olivia began her morning routine, the warm towel along his arms, smoothing the wrinkles from the sheets, adjusting his position so that his muscles would not tense from staying still too long. As always, Logan watched her carefully. He seemed grounded by her presence, as if she were the only constant in a world he no longer recognized. You know, he said quietly, you talk to me like I am a person, not a project, not an asset, not a headline. That is because you are a person, Olivia replied. Recovery is not a company meeting. You do not have to perform here. He absorbed her words, then closed his eyes as if trying to center himself. But when Olivia reached for her stethoscope, a knock came at the door. Before she could answer, the door swung open sharply. It was Brandon Mercer. His expression was stiff, as if carved from stone. Reed, I need to speak with you. Outside. Olivia straightened. I am in the middle of checking his breathing. It will take 1 minute, Brandon said. It is important. Logan exhaled, clearly exhausted by the interruption. Go, he whispered. They will not stop otherwise. Olivia stepped into the hallway. Brandon closed the door behind them. He spoke in a low voice meant to sound polite, but carried a thick layer of warning. We have concerns about the amount of time you spend with Logan. Concerns? Olivia repeated evenly. Yes, he said. Logan is vulnerable. He is confused. He is forming emotional attachments that may cloud his judgment. We need him focused on recovery, not connections that complicate things. Olivia felt a tightening in her chest, but kept her tone steady. I am his nurse. He is supposed to feel supported. That is part of the healing process. Brandon leaned closer. Let me be clear. We will not tolerate staff encouraging him to explore memories that are better left undisturbed. She lifted an eyebrow. Are you referring to something specific? Brandon paused, then said, there are details of the accident that the family does not want Logan fixating on. It is unnecessary stress. We expect you not to discuss anything outside of standard care. Olivia stared at him, trying to decipher his intent. I am not discussing the accident with him. He barely remembers more than rain. Brandon gave a tight nod. Good. Let us keep it that way. He walked off, leaving Olivia standing alone in the hallway. Something was wrong. She felt it in the way he spoke, in the way the accident was always treated like a fragile subject, in the way no one ever answered the simple question of why Logan had been driving alone that night. When she returned to the room, Logan looked up immediately. What did he say? Logan asked. Nothing you need to worry about. Olivia replied as she resumed her checkup. Just hospital protocol. Logan studied her face. It was not just protocol. I know when someone is spinning me a story. Olivia sighed. You need to focus on healing, not on everyone else's motives. He hesitated, then asked, Olivia, why do I remember the gala so clearly, but not the accident? Why do I remember you scolding me over champagne, but nothing about getting into my car? She sat beside the bed. His confusion was painful to watch. The brain can lock onto certain memories when there is emotional clarity, she explained softly. The gala was loud and bright, and filled with moments you understood. The accident was traumatic and frightening. That difference affects what your mind holds on to. But something feels off, Logan whispered. When I try to picture the accident, it is not blank. It is blocked. Olivia swallowed. She wanted to reassure him. She wanted to protect him. But protecting him meant staying within the boundaries of her role. Your memories will return when your mind is ready, she said. He held her gaze for a long moment, as if silently asking her to tell him more, to tell him the truth. But she could not. Not yet. Before either of them could speak again, her pager vibrated. She checked the message. I need to bring in the portable equipment for your cognitive assessment, she told him. It will not take long. As she stepped away, Logan whispered, Olivia, please do not let them decide what I get to remember. She froze but did not turn around. You deserve the truth, she said quietly. And when it is safe, I believe you will have it. She left the room to retrieve the equipment, unaware that the line she had just spoken had set something irreversible in motion, something that would unravel everything the Mercer family was trying to hide, and everything Olivia was trying to protect. By the end of the week, the shift in the hospital's atmosphere had become impossible to ignore. The air around room 5C felt charged with quiet tension. Conversations stopped whenever Olivia Reed walked by. Nurses who usually greeted her with warm smiles now exchanged quick glances instead. Something had changed, and she felt it every time she stepped into the hallway. It began the morning after Brandon Mercer confronted her. Olivia arrived early, wanting to check on Logan before the day team settled in. As she placed her bag in the staff lounge, she overheard two nurses whispering near the counter, their backs partially turned. I heard she spends half the night sitting in his room, one said quietly. That is what the family said, the other replied. They are worried she is influencing him. You know how memory loss works. He is vulnerable. When they noticed Olivia, they immediately stopped talking, but the damage was already done. She grabbed her chart and walked out, her chest tight. By the time she reached room 5C, she had composed herself enough to smile softly when Logan turned toward her. Morning, he said, voice steadier each day. You look tired. She checked his vitals. Long night. Nothing to worry about. But Logan noticed the small signs most people overlooked now. The way her shoulders tensed, the way she avoided eye contact for a moment longer than usual, the way she breathed deeper before answering. Olivia, he said quietly, something is wrong. Nothing is wrong, she replied, adjusting his blanket with careful precision. He lifted an eyebrow. You are a terrible liar. She paused, then managed a soft laugh. I will take that as a compliment. She stepped to the monitor, pretending to review the numbers, but Logan could see the shift in her demeanor. She was keeping a careful distance, a distance that had not been there before. What did Brandon say to you? Logan asked. Nothing worth repeating, she answered. Did he threaten your job? Olivia hesitated, then shook her head. He did not. Threaten me. He reminded me of protocol. That is all. That is not all, Logan said. I know him. He wants control over everything, including who I talk to. He is concerned about your stress level, Olivia said, choosing her words with caution. Logan watched her for a long moment. You are avoiding me, he said quietly. The words landed harder than she expected. She swallowed. I am trying to keep things professional. There are rumors. And the more people talk, the harder it becomes for me to do my job. Logan's voice dropped. Did I do something to cause that? No, she whispered. None of this is your fault. But it was not entirely untrue. His recovery had happened more quickly, more dramatically, when she was in the room. He reached for her hand when he woke. He relaxed only when she spoke. He relied on her in ways that went far beyond standard nurse-patient dynamics. And people noticed. Later that morning, during his cognitive assessment, the tension became impossible to ignore. Olivia positioned the light, the flashcards, and the sensory tools while a resident asked questions about dates, locations, and familiar faces. But Logan kept glancing at Olivia, searching for reassurance, grounding himself in her presence. The resident frowned. Mr. Mercer, please look at me. We need your full focus. Logan nodded, but his attention drifted again. Olivia stepped back, trying to give him space. But then the resident made an unfortunate remark. You need to rely on medical staff, she said briskly. Not on emotional support from someone who happens to be in the room. That did it. Logan's expression hardened. She has been the one constant in this entire experience, he said. If you want me to focus, do not talk about her like she is irrelevant. The resident stiffened, clearly startled. Olivia intervened quickly. Let us take a short break. When the team stepped out, she lowered the bed slightly so Logan could rest. You should not defend me like that, she said gently. It only fuels the rumors. They are only rumors because people know nothing about me right now, he replied. You are the only thing that feels real. She felt the weight of those words settle heavily between them. Logan, she said softly, you are recovering. You are confused. You are vulnerable. I do not want to become part of a narrative. That complicates your healing. He closed his eyes, frustrated. You think this is confusion. I think you are still finding your way back, she said. For the first time since waking up, Logan looked truly hurt. So you are pulling away. I am doing what is necessary to protect you, Olivia answered. Silence settled over the room, heavy and uncomfortable. When she stepped into the hallway to give him space, she found Dr. Hale waiting. Reed, he said, HR received an anonymous concern that you might be over-involved with a patient. We have to address it. There it was. The fracture made visible. Olivia kept her voice steady. I have followed every protocol. I know, Dr. Hale said gently. But perception can be as damaging as fact. She nodded. What do you need from me? For now, keep emotional distance. Avoid unnecessary conversations. Let other nurses rotate in for support. She felt her heart sink, but she agreed. When she returned to the room later, Logan noticed her distance before she even spoke. You are leaving, he said. Not as a question, but as understanding. I will still be part of your care team, she said carefully. But I need to give space for other staff to rotate in. It is standard procedure for cases like yours. He let out a soft, painful exhale. I do not want anyone else. Recovery is not about what you want, Olivia said. It is about what you need. You are what I need, he whispered. Olivia froze. She knew he meant it in the most sincere, vulnerable way, and that made her chest tighten. But she could not say the words he wanted to hear. Instead, she said, you need time. You need clarity. And for that, you need distance. She stepped back. Logan's expression faltered, confusion and hurt mixing in his eyes. She placed his chart at the foot of the bed, her voice barely above a whisper. I am still here, just not in the way I was. When she walked out, Logan stared at the doorway long after it closed, the silence around him louder than any monitor in the room. For the first time since waking up, he felt alone. The next 48 hours moved in a slow, heavy rhythm. Logan Mercer continued physical therapy with the day team, working through exercises that challenged muscles weakened by days of immobility. His body was healing, but his mind was tangled in unanswered questions. Every attempt to recall the night of the accident ended the same way. A sharp pulse of fear, the screech of brakes, rain hitting glass, and then a blank wall. And beneath all of that was something else. A quiet ache that settled in every time he realized Olivia Reed was keeping her distance. He saw her in the hallway twice, speaking with other nurses, her posture stiff with professionalism. She entered his room only for mandatory checks, her voice gentle but controlled, her eyes drifting away as soon as he tried to meet them. Logan noticed everything. He always had. By the third evening, he could no longer ignore the feeling that someone was steering his recovery in a direction he did not understand. And the more the Mercer family tried to manage his environment, the more suspicious he became. That suspicion sharpened when he overheard Brandon speaking with Dr. Hale just outside his partially open door. His memory is not stable, Brandon said in a low voice. We cannot have him focusing on irrelevant details, especially anything regarding the garage or the timeline of his departure that night. Dr. Hale responded cautiously. I cannot control what he remembers. You can control who he talks to, Brandon said. Logan's pulse spiked. He tried to sit up straighter, but the movement strained his ribs. He listened harder. Reed is too involved, Brandon continued. Remove her from the rotation entirely. Logan froze. Dr. Hale hesitated. She has followed protocol. Then enforce stricter protocol, Brandon snapped. She has influence over him. I will not say it again. Their voices drifted farther down the hall. Logan stared at the doorway long after they were gone. That was the moment he knew something was being kept from him. Something serious. Something dangerous. And Olivia was being pushed away to prevent him from finding out. He waited until his evening nursing check to confront her. When she stepped into the room, carrying her chart and trying her best to look detached, Logan spoke before she could say a word. Why are they trying to remove you from my case? Olivia stiffened, her fingers tightening around the clipboard. You should not be listening to conversations outside your room. Then they should not be having conversations outside my room, Logan replied. Tell me the truth. She inhaled carefully. There are rumors, HR reviews, concerns about professionalism. Nothing more. Logan shook his head. That is not what I heard. Olivia hesitated, her expression torn. Her training told her to protect the patient from stress. Her instinct told her to protect him from something worse. Finally, she said softly, your family believes that I am interfering with your recovery. They think you are relying on me too much. Logan stared at her. I rely on you because you are the only one who is honest with me. That is exactly why they want distance, she whispered. They want control. Control over what? Your narrative, she said. He frowned. My narrative? I survived a car accident. That is all. Olivia lowered her eyes, her voice quiet but steady. You survived something. But I do not think it was just an accident. The room fell completely still. Logan watched her carefully. You know something. I know what I saw that night after the gala, she said. I know what the emergency team said when they first brought you in. And I know what the garage technician whispered before someone shut him up. Olivia, he said urgently. Tell me. She stepped closer, her voice low and deliberate. They said your brakes did not fail by chance. They said someone tampered with your car. But the official report does not mention any of that. It is as if it was erased. Logan's breath stalled. And there is more, she continued. Your cousin Brandon was uncomfortably quick to take temporary control of Mercer Holdings after your accident. Almost as if he expected you to be out of the picture for a long time. Logan closed his eyes, his jaw tightening. So someone wanted me gone. I cannot say that, Olivia said quickly. Not without evidence. But I can say something is wrong. And someone wants your memory to stay broken. He opened his eyes again. And they want you away from me because you tell me the truth. She did not answer. She did not need to. He reached for her hand. Weakly, but with purpose. She did not move away this time. Olivia, he said quietly. I need you with me. I cannot figure this out alone. Her chest tightened painfully at his words. She fought the urge to look away. You are not alone, she whispered. But you have to. Let the next steps happen carefully. The truth will come, but we need to protect your recovery first. He held her gaze, reading the sincerity in her eyes. But before either of them could say more, a sharp knock sounded on the door. Victoria Mercer stepped in gracefully, Brandon behind her. The tension was immediate. Victoria smiled politely. Nurse Reed, your presence is no longer required for this rotation. We will allow another nurse to take over your duties for the rest of the evening. Olivia straightened. His vitals are not finished. We insist, Victoria said, her tone clipped despite the smile. Family preference. Logan tried to sit up. She stays. Brandon stepped forward. Logan, this is not up for debate. Olivia placed a hand gently on Logan's arm. Do not strain yourself. Brandon's eyes flicked to where her hand rested. His jaw tightened. Then he said coldly, Reed, you will step outside. Now. Olivia exhaled slowly, forcing herself to remain calm in front of Logan. She collected her chart, gave Logan one last reassuring look, and walked toward the door. Just before she exited, Logan called out softly, Please do not leave. It was the first time his voice broke. Olivia paused, swallowed hard, and answered with steady compassion, I will be right outside this room. You are not alone. She stepped into the hallway and closed the door, leaving Logan inside with the family who feared his truth and feared her even more. Inside room 5C, Logan's world tightened. Outside, Olivia's resolve hardened. The fracture that had begun with rumors had now split wide open, and there was no turning back. The hallway outside room 5C felt colder than usual, as if the building itself sensed the shift that had taken place. Olivia Reed stood against the wall, her heart steady but her thoughts racing. She could hear raised voices behind the door, Victoria's firm insistence, Brandon's sharper demands, and Logan's weakened, frustrated attempts to push back. She wanted to go in. She wanted to protect him. But for now, all she could do was wait. A moment later, the door finally opened. Victoria stepped out first, adjusting her designer scarf as if the air offended her. Brandon followed with a tense expression, avoiding eye contact with Olivia. Neither said a word as they walked away, their footsteps echoing down the sterile hall. When the door eased shut behind them, silence settled. Olivia drew a slow breath, then stepped back into the room. Logan lay slightly angled toward the door, his chest rising unevenly. His eyes lifted to her with visible relief. You came back, he whispered. I told you I would be right outside, Olivia said softly as she moved to his side. How are you feeling? He let out a shaky exhale. Like I am missing half the story, and they are terrified I will remember it. Olivia checked his vitals, careful to maintain the gentle professionalism that grounded him. Your stress level is elevated. Let us slow your breathing. She guided him through a simple breathing exercise. After several cycles, his shoulders loosened, but his expression remained tense. Then, unexpectedly, he pressed a hand to his temple. Olivia, Something is coming back. She froze. A memory? He nodded slowly. Not the whole thing. Just flashes. He closed his eyes, voice unsteady. I remember walking to the garage after the gala. The rain was starting. Someone was calling my name. A man. His breathing quickened. I turned around and then, he stopped, inhaling sharply. Go slowly, Olivia whispered. There was an argument, Logan said. I remember a hand grabbing my arm. I remember saying, you cannot do this. And then, headlights in the rain. Metal. The feeling of losing control. Olivia steadied him with one hand on the railing. You are doing well. Do not force anything more. But Logan opened his eyes, confusion and fear mixing together. Olivia, that was not an accident, he said quietly. I can feel it. She swallowed, her voice gentle. Then we will let the truth come in its own time. His breathing calmed. Then his gaze softened with something deeper. Everyone else treats me like a problem, he whispered. But you look at me like a person. You always have. Olivia felt her chest tighten, but she stayed steady. You deserve dignity, Logan. Title or no title. Memory or no memory. He gave a faint, tired smile. Then do not leave me now. I am not going anywhere, she said. Even if they try to pull me off your case, I will make sure you have someone by your side. For the first time since he had awakened, Logan's shoulders relaxed completely, as if hearing those words gave him permission to rest. He whispered one final thought before sleep overtook him. Olivia, you are the only part that feels clear. She stood beside him long after his eyes closed, knowing the most fragile stage of his recovery had begun, and knowing that the next memory he regained might change everything. The next morning arrived quietly, with soft light pushing through the blinds of room 5C. For the first time since the accident, Logan Mercer woke without confusion clouding his expression. His breathing was steady, his eyes alert. Something had shifted during the night, something he could finally name. Olivia entered with her chart, her steps careful but warm. Good morning, she said softly. How are you feeling? Logan's gaze followed her with sharp clarity. I remember more. She paused. Are you ready to talk about it? He nodded slowly. Yes, I think I have to. Olivia set the chart aside and pulled a chair closer to the bed, sitting where he could see her clearly. He took a steady breath. It started after the gala, he said. I walked out the back entrance because I wanted air. It was raining harder by then. I remember heading toward the garage, and then I heard my name. Someone called out to you? Olivia asked. Yes. He stepped out from behind a support column. Brandon. Olivia's chest tightened, but she maintained her composure. Go on. He looked angry. Not frustrated. Not worried. Angry. Logan paused, swallowing. He said the board was losing patience. That I was ruining everything by dragging out decisions. I told him we could talk Monday. He said Monday was too late. He closed his eyes for a moment as the memory sharpened. I tried to walk past him, but he grabbed my arm. Hard. Olivia kept her voice calm. And then, I told him he could not force me into anything. I told him I would not sign over temporary control of the investment division. That is when his expression changed. He opened his eyes again, clearer than before. He said, you will not stop me. And then he turned away quickly, like he needed to be somewhere. Olivia exhaled carefully. What happened next? I reached my car. The garage lights flickered because of the storm. When I opened the door, something felt wrong. I do not know how to describe it, just wrong. He stared down at his hands. I got in anyway. I turned the key, and the car lurched forward. Before I touched the pedal, Olivia's breath caught. So you could not stop it? No, Logan answered. When I hit the brakes, the pedal went straight to the floor. Nothing responded. The dashboard flashed, and the car skidded on the wet pavement. I lost control immediately. He paused as a tremor passed through his voice. Not fear, but clarity. That was when I realized the brakes were already gone before I left the garage. Olivia leaned forward. Are you absolutely certain? Yes, Logan whispered. Someone tampered with my car. Silence filled the room, heavy but validating. The truth was no longer hidden in fragments. It stood complete. What are you going to do? Olivia asked quietly. Logan met her eyes with a steadiness she had not seen since the night of the gala. First, I need the full medical report. Everything the family tried to keep from me. After that, I am going to find evidence. And I am going to expose whoever did this. Olivia nodded slowly. I will help you in any way that is safe. He gave a faint smile. You already have. Just then, her pager buzzed. a reminder that another nurse needed assistance down the hall. She stood reluctantly. "I will be back soon," she said. As she turned to leave, Logan called her name gently. "Olivia." She looked back. "You helped me remember who I am," he said. "And now I know why they wanted you gone." Olivia held his gaze for a moment that felt both dangerous and necessary. Then she left the room, her heart steady with the knowledge that the truth was finally taking shape, and that the final confrontation was coming. Later that afternoon, the hospital administrative wing grew unusually busy. Meetings that were never scheduled suddenly appeared on the calendar. Security was redirected. Dr. Hale was summoned for a confidential discussion. And down the hall in room 5C, Logan Mercer sat upright with a calm resolve that no one could mistake for fear. He had requested his full medical report. He had requested the garage technician's notes. And he had requested that all discussions take place with a hospital representative present. It took less than 1 hour for the truth to stop hiding. The technician confirmed what Olivia had already suspected. The brake line had been deliberately cut. The finding had been marked for internal review, but before the report could be finalized, a member of the Mercer family had insisted the document be corrected to avoid public panic. Dr. Hale confirmed every detail directly. Brandon and Victoria arrived moments later, their expressions tight. They offered explanations about protecting the company image and avoiding unnecessary stress, but the words dissolved under the weight of the truth. Logan stayed calm the entire time. He did not raise his voice. He did not accuse. He simply said, with quiet steadiness, "I know what happened, and I will pursue justice. None of you will silence me again." There was nothing left for them to say. They left the room without another word. When everything settled, Olivia stepped inside gently, her breath soft, her presence grounding. Logan turned to her, and for the first time since he had awakened, his expression carried peace instead of fear. "It is done," he said. "The truth is finally in the open." Olivia nodded, her voice warm. "I am glad you have clarity." He held her gaze for a long, quiet moment. "I could not have reached this point without you. You were the one person who saw me, not my name, not my family, not the headlines." Olivia felt her chest tighten. With emotion, she kept steady. "You deserved someone in your corner." He smiled gently. "You have been more than that." She stepped closer, her tone soft but certain. "Focus on healing, Logan. You have a long road ahead, but it is yours now. Not controlled, not manipulated. Yours. And I want you to be part of it," he said quietly. Olivia held his gaze, steady and sincere. "One step at a time. Health first. Truth next. Life, when you are ready." Logan exhaled, a real breath, free of fear. "Then I will work toward ready." She squeezed his hand, professional, warm, unwavering. Outside the window, the afternoon light finally broke through the clouds, filling the room with a soft golden glow. It felt like a promise of recovery, a promise of justice, a promise of something deeper, blooming slowly, without pressure or confusion. As Olivia left the room to update his chart, Logan watched her with a calm, grateful certainty. For the first time since the accident, his life was truly his again. And it had begun with a simple mistake at a gala, one that changed everything.